Now, CSS, as we have agreed, is actually an acronym for cascading style sheets. So someone will tell you why CSS. The reason for us to learn CSS is that what makes a website intuitive, or what makes a site to have a feeling for you to say this is a good site or make a site appealing is what we would refer as CSS. So what makes a website beautiful in that sense is brought about by cascading style sheets, or what we would say CSS. Yes. Shortly as we wait for the others, I can see there are many requests on addition. Oh, okay. When is the meeting? Ini grup yang wanafunzi jamani, students mami lecturer so wananiongoja hapa, wanakuja wakiassemble nikimaliza hii hata namaliza hii. So I was continuing, where was I? You can come as well as yes as I finish up. Yes. So I was saying that what makes a site impressive is what we would regard as CSS. So for us to be able to create stunning website, or what we say beautiful websites, it is actually the CSS. So maybe straight away, I want us to look for an example here to demonstrate the use of CSS. As usual, of course, everyone knows what we mean from all the way from HTML up to document type, to tell the browser what type of document to expect: HTML, head, title, style. You know, this is where I'm introducing the style, where I would rather have the body of your document is where I've introduced the CSS. So CSS in this regard here is a color coding. Of course, we will be able to see CSS and the different colors. So this is style which has been applied to header 1, and it is actually color. So I would want to just explain a little bit on these properties. So the CSS has a selector, a property, and a value. CSS syntax is made up of 3 main parts: the selector, the property, and the value. So the selector is normally the HTML element tag you wish to define. The property is the attribute you wish to change. Which attribute do you want to change in this regard? For example, here is the one I'm interested here is the color. Which property, of course, each property can take a value. The property and the value are separated by a colon and surrounded by curly braces. So the property is the color in this regard, and the value is black. The attribute we wish to change is body. So just get those 3 things: the selector, the property, and the value. Once this applies all through to the different types of styles. So I wanted you to appreciate that before I shift you back to where we are. So in this case, which one is the selector, the property, and the value?
Head 1 is the selector, color is the property. Yeah.
The coding is the color coding is the value. Sindio?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, applications of this CSS, if we get this, I think everyone knows how to just take this and then you take it and then you open it in a web browser. You save it in a notepad, then you open, and then you'll be able to see what is displayed. Now, applications of CSS. CSS is the most widely used style language over the web. And CSS actually saves time, makes pages to load faster. It is easy to maintain because it is all about changing the style and elements in the web page. So once you change style, it will be updated on all the pages automatically. Superior styles to HTML, it brings in superior styles to the language or hypertext markup language. Multiple device compatibility. Style sheets allow content to be optimized for more than one type of device. So that once it is presented on different platforms, whether it is a mobile device, it can be easy. So style sheets allow content to be optimized for different devices. Global web standard. Now HTML attributes are being deprecated or removed, and it is being recommended to use CSS, you see. So you can see that there is a shift towards removing other attributes which can be accommodated within the CSS. So we have agreed looking at what is CSS and advantages of CSS. Shortly. Now we have also agreed on the CSS syntax, that is as selector, property, and value. This is a very good diagrammatic representation of that. So that the table is now the selector, the border is the property. Those ones are the definition for the values. It can be in pixels, it can be solid, it can be colors, depending on values that you want to supply or change all throughout your document. So this is a very good diagram to elaborate the syntax or the parts of a CSS. Of course, tomorrow you will be told to elaborate the parts that makes up a CSS, or using an example to demonstrate the use of CSS. So you should know that CSS contains the selector, the property, and the value. This takes me straight to types of selectors. So we have selector, universal selectors, which select elements of a specific, rather than selecting elements of specific type, the universal selector simply matches the name of any element type. So this rule renders the content of every element in your document black. So of course, this is the coding for the black color. So when you want to render all every element in your document to black, you need to use this asterisk instead of selector. So meaning that all elements within your document are now changed to black. I hope you understand by universal selector. This is the normal selector where we had the selector, the property, and the value. Of course, considering the different coding. These are color coding. We have tables of colors. Many colors are represented using the different coding standards. The descendant selector. This is when you want to apply a style rule to a particular element, particular specific element only. Now, you use, and that is, for example, you want to make all those ones which are in an order or an ordered list. Every item in ordered or an ordered list in that regard, you want all those elements to take black color. Then I will say an ordered list, embed that like that, color like that, so that all what is in that particular document is, or whatever is in that ordered list is changed or forced to be black. So you put in the selector, the property, and the value like that. The class selector, you can define, and I know tomorrow someone will tell you differentiate between universal selectors, descent selectors, and class selectors. So you should be very keen on the different selectors. So class selectors define style rules based on class attributes of elements. So all elements having that class will be formatted according to a defined rule. So anything that has black, you see, class selector says that the style is based on class attribute of elements, or elements having that class will be formatted according to the defined rule. So anything which is written or which is contained within black or that class will be changed to automatically to follow that coding, which is actually black. So this rule renders the content in black for every element with a class attribute set to black. Anything with an attribute set to black will be reflected with a color black in your document. Sometimes you can narrow particularly so that headers, specific headers, specifically header 1 to be black. You see how you bring it? All header 1s within your document to be black. Then you say header 1.black, then color like that. So this to mean the selector, the property, and the value. You see how you change it? Very small changes. So you can also apply selectors to given elements. For example, P class, remember I said this part, you see class is equal center bold. This paragraph will be styled by the class center and bold like that. Once you bound it within a P beta like that, there is also ID selectors. You will be able to see the ID selectors. So this ID selector, this is very important again. You can define style rule based on ID attribute of elements. So all elements having that ID will be formatted according to that rule. Any element having an ID black will be formatted following this color. Any element having this, that's why you begin by ash. Ash ID selector uses ash. So you bring in ash black, meaning everything having an ID black will be changed to that relevant color. We have also child selectors, attribute. You'll be able to read those ones. Multiple style rules, grouping selectors. Now, this is a very, very important area on CSS. This is what I wanted to emphasize. How do you include CSS within your document? So the way you include, as you have seen from the beginning, I open with style. This style tag makes your CSS to be included within your document. So I'll open this style, bring whatever I want to appear. For example, here you can see style type equals to text / CSS media equals to all. So so that we have body, the background should be, the background color is linen, that's selector, body, property, background color. What should it take is linen as a color. Header 1, that is property, color should be, that should take is maroon. Margin left is 40 pixels on the left margin. So just I wanted you to know how do you embed or include CSS within your document. You open the style and then you close the style. So you introduce within your document by opening a style. For example, here, when you immediately close the head, and normally this you keep a separate file. You know, when you are developing a website, you work on one folder. You create one folder, maybe the school management system. You normally create one folder. So within that folder, you have a specific file on CSS. So you will be defining all your CSS within one file that will be referenced within the others. Of course, we'll be able to see this in detail when we move to external style sheets. It makes it more elaborative. Anyway, I just wanted to say when I want to include CSS in my document, I use style tag. I know tomorrow someone might tell you demonstrate the use of style element. as used in CSS. So you need to know the style tag is used, or style element in that regard is used to include CSS within your document. So for this, yes. Any question? There's some background interference. I was saying that for this particular HTML, you realize that this heading, which is header 1 here, you can see it is displayed in red, in maroon, as defined within this header 1. You see this property, the selector, header 1, the property it is taking is color, and which color? Maroon. So whatever it will be displayed within your document is heading. You can see this heading is maroon, considering how this CSS has been defined here. The selector, of course, here is the selector, the property, and the value. So you can see this is maroon, this is a paragraph, like that, considering how the CSS has been defined. And you can see I am defining the style within the head section. Take note of that. I'm putting the style within the header section. Yes. Hi. You have a meeting, eh? Just have a seat as I finish up. So I was talking about style sheet. I'm introducing style sheet within the head section. Then now, as usual, the body of my document, I have whatever HTML that I would want, but you will see that once I've put in header 1, this is the heading, it will take whatever has been defined by CSS, which is actually within the head section. You define the CSS within the head section. So we have other attributes that you can be defined, attributes and values. But, my interest is being able to differentiate inline CSS, external CSS, and using import rule. So please, if I can cut a lot of background interference. Please mute so that we can go very quickly. Please. So I was talking about, kindly mute, please. I want to move quickly. Samuel Kariuki. I was talking about inline CSS. So you can use style attributes, or you can use style attributes of any HTML element to define style rules. These rules will be applied to that element only. So I can dictate the CSS within that particular element only using inline style sheets, or what we say inline CSS. Can you see this inline CSS defined here? So that header 1 style is equals to color, of course, and then the relevant color coding. So this is an example of an inline CSS. Can you compare this with an external CSS? External CSS will come in to be able to apply all throughout your document. You see, here we have an external CSS, such that within the head section, I have defined link type equals to text stroke CSS and href. The reference is mystyle.css. So you will be having an independent file within your folder written mystyle.css, which is, this is your CSS file, which will be revisited by any of the HTML documents within that directory. So you will be just making reference within your document. And this is the conventional way of including CSS within your site. There is no day you will start working on a website and you start doing inline CSS one by one. You will always be having one file which will be making reference within your site. So that link type text like that, href media equals to all. So it will be able to apply all throughout your documents. And remember, this is applying, this CSS is within dictated within the add section as we had agreed, but this is an external style sheet applying all throughout your document. But an inline style sheet is only within that specific element, as you have seen here. Only within that specific element. And you can see it is an element even inside the body. It is not in the head section. So when I define within the head section, it will be appearing throughout my document. I hope we are still together. Yes, class. I hope we are still together.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I was talking about inline and external. You have seen how you dictate an inline style sheet. That is dictated within a particular section of your page, so that I can even introduce within the body. But if you want an overall CSS that cuts across within your document, bring in the CSS within the head section here. That is what we say external style sheets. So this is an example of external CSS where you have seen how I'm making it appear within the add section, the add tag. So just know exactly where an inline and an external CSS appears. Now, I want to talk about imported CSS. This is a kind of CSS which uses import rule. The import rule uses this @ sign, and it is used to import an external CSS in a manner similar to link element type as used in external CSS. Can you take note this link type? So when I say link type equals to text CSS href mystyle.css, it applies. This is what all my documents will be making reference to. But now I can also, in addition, other than using this link type, I can use import rule. So that I want to apply CSS to my document, I can say at import, and then you put in the relevant directory or the relevant file in that regard. So in this instance, the file that contains the CSS is mystyle.css. So tomorrow when you are doing coding, or when you are working on your site, when you want to make reference to the file containing CSS, you can just embed within the add section the same way you dictate an external CSS. Remember, I said external CSS, you just put at the add section and appears all through your document, so that the file containing the CSS is mystyle.css. So every other section of the document will be just making reference to mystyle.css. Another way is using the import rule, which works similarly the same way with that link type. So that I want to include CSS, I just say, and this one is easier, because you don't just dictate about link type is cost this. You just write at import mystyle.css, meaning utilize this file, mystyle.css, which contains the files. So I hope you have seen the functioning of imported CSS, or what we say at import. So you will read on your own on CSS rules, rule overriding. Maybe just to mention, and any inline style sheet make higher priority or overrides any rule defined within the style tags or rules defined within external style sheet. You have an instance whereby within your document you have a CSS file, but at a specific section within your document you have defined an inline style sheet. Then we are saying an inline style sheet has a more priority than an external style sheet. So whatever will be displayed, even if you had dictated a specific color within the whole page, but inside your document, within the body section, there is a specific element which has been defined to take an inline style sheet, then that one will be given a priority. So whatever colors or whatever property defined by that inline will be given priority more than the external style sheet. Another thing is any rule defined in style within the style tag will override rules defined in any external style sheet file. So whatever is bounded within the style tags will be given more preference than whatever you have defined to be overall or external within your head section. Remember, the external style sheet is dictated within the header section. So whatever is given priority is what is in the bounded by the style tags. So any rule defined in external style sheet file takes the lowest priority, and rules defined in this file will be applied only when the other two rules we have outlined are not applicable. So if you don't have an inline style sheet, or we don't have anything bounded within the style tag, then the rules defined within the external style sheet will take a priority. So maybe I don't want to mention much about comments, because the way we include comments in CSS is the same way we just include CSS in any other, the comments in any other programming. You just use / asterisk, then whatever comment that you want to write. Remember, comments are not displayed within your browsers in any page or any of your pages. So you just include comments using / asterisk, the same way you normally use in Java or any other programming language. So anyway, with that, I would want to conclude today's session on CSS. So it's now your duty to read on CSS as presented in my student manual. So read in detail on CSS so that in the next session, I should be comfortable to begin on JavaScript. So in the next class, I'll work on JavaScript. So that is it, unless there is a question or a concern on the same. Is any question? Any question on CSS? I hope you are still working on my assignments, because I'm expecting to check them once we meet for a physical class. So with that, if there is no, yes, Kevin? Kevin, you wanted to say something?
I was just saying we are working on the project.
Oh, there's good progress, eh?
Yeah.
I hope you're also using these concepts we are learning on CSS within the project.
Yes.
Okay. So we can catch up in the next class. Thank you.